London, one of the richest, most influential cities on Earth. A city filled with billionaires, royal history, global banks, luxury apartments, and some of the most expensive real estate in human history. But behind the shining skyline of London, there's a strange question almost nobody asks. Who actually owns this city? Because if you look closely, you'll discover something shocking. A massive portion of London's luxury properties, office towers, football clubs, hotels, and even critical infrastructure are no longer owned by British people. Instead, they've quietly been bought by foreign billionaires, oligarchs, and governments. Especially one region, the Gulf states.
Over the last 2 decades, countries like Qatar, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia have spent hundreds of billions of dollars buying pieces of London. And today, some experts believe foreign investors own so much of the city that parts of London are becoming financially disconnected from the people who actually live there. This isn't just about real estate. It's about influence, power, and the silent transformation of one of the world's most important capitals. So how did this happen? Why are foreign governments buying London? And what happens if a city slowly stops belonging to its own people? This is the story of how London was quietly sold to the world.
Why London? To understand why global elites are obsessed with London, you first need to understand what London really is. London isn't just a city, it's a financial safe zone. For centuries, London has been one of the world's most powerful banking centers. It has political stability, strong property laws, global influence, elite schools, luxury lifestyles, and perhaps most importantly, a reputation for protecting wealth. If you are a billionaire from a politically unstable country, London feels safe. Your money is protected.
Your assets are protected, and your identity can often stay hidden behind offshore companies and legal loopholes. This made London the perfect destination for international wealth, especially after the 1990s. As globalization accelerated, foreign money began pouring into the city at an unbelievable scale. Luxury apartments became investment tools. Entire neighborhoods transformed into global asset markets. And slowly, London stopped behaving like a normal city. Property prices exploded, wealth flooded in, and local residents began getting priced out. But this was only the beginning, because one group of investors became especially powerful: the Gulf states. The Gulf takeover. Over the past 20 years, Gulf nations have invested enormous amounts of money into the United Kingdom, and London became the center of it all. Qatar alone owns stakes in some of London's most iconic landmarks, including the Shard, Harrods, Canary Wharf, luxury hotels, office towers, residential developments. The country's sovereign wealth fund spent decades quietly acquiring pieces of the city. And Qatar isn't alone. The UAE invested heavily into finance, infrastructure, ports, and luxury real estate. Saudi Arabia also expanded investments across British businesses and properties. To understand why, you need to think beyond real estate. These countries aren't just buying buildings.
They're buying influence. Owning parts of London gives global prestige, political relationships, economic leverage, and long-term financial security beyond oil. Especially as Gulf countries prepare for a future where oil may no longer dominate the global economy, London became a place to store national wealth. A giant financial vault disguised as a city. But for ordinary Londoners, the consequences became harder and harder to ignore. The housing crisis. Today, London has one of the worst housing affordability crises in Europe. Average people struggle to buy homes. Rent prices continue rising, and many luxury apartments sit completely empty. Why? Because some properties were never meant to be lived in.
They were purchased as assets, safe investments for global elites. In some parts of central London, entire buildings remain dark at night because nobody actually lives there. The apartments function more like bank accounts than homes. Critics argue this transformed housing into a financial product instead of a human necessity. And the numbers are staggering. In certain luxury districts, foreign ownership dominates the market.
Developers increasingly design projects for overseas investors instead of local families. Meanwhile, many workers can no longer afford to live near the city they work in. Teachers, nurses, young professionals, even middle-class residents are being pushed farther away from central London every year. Some call it globalization. Others call it economic colonization. But regardless of the label, London has changed dramatically, and not everyone is happy about it.
The secret world of offshore money. But the story becomes even darker. Because not all foreign money entering London is clean. For years, investigators and journalists have warned that London became one of the world's biggest hubs for laundering global wealth. Dirty money, corruption, hidden assets, offshore shell companies. Luxury real estate offered the perfect hiding place. A billionaire could purchase a mansion through anonymous companies registered in tax havens. And suddenly, ownership became almost impossible to trace.
This system became so widespread that critics even gave London a nickname, Londongrad, a reference to the enormous amount of Russian oligarch money flowing into the city. But the issue extended far beyond Russia. Money from all over the world entered London's property market, some legal, some questionable. And because the city benefited economically, authorities were often slow to react. Luxury construction boomed, banks profited, law firms profited, developers profited. The city became deeply connected to international wealth flows. But then, the world changed, especially after the war in Ukraine.
The global backlash. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, governments across Europe suddenly became far more aggressive about hidden foreign wealth. Sanctions targeted oligarchs, assets were frozen, questions exploded about who really owned property in major Western cities, and London found itself under intense scrutiny. For years, experts had warned that allowing massive amounts of anonymous foreign wealth into the city carried serious risks. Now governments were finally paying attention. New transparency laws were introduced, investigations increased. But many critics argued it was too late. Because by then, foreign ownership had already become deeply embedded into the city itself, and the bigger question remained unanswered. What happens when the world's greatest cities become investment vehicles for the global rich?
London still looks powerful. The skyline still shines. The luxury towers still rise higher every year. Tourists still flood the streets, and billionaires continue buying property at astonishing prices. But beneath the surface, the city is changing. Not through war, not through invasion, but through money. Slowly, quietly, building by building, street by street. Some see this as the inevitable future of globalization. Others see it as the loss of national identity. But one thing is certain. London is no longer just Britain's capital. It has become something else entirely. A global city owned by the world. And perhaps the most disturbing part of all is that this transformation happened almost silently.